The reason why I do a 3-year plan is because it's long enough for our brains to comprehend, but not too long to where you go into fairy tale land. And I'm big on reverse engineering the process of the life you want, because here's the reality, like life changes. Life is a spectrum. It's constantly evolving. You have 3 different unique phases of life. You have the go-go phase, you have the slow-go phase, and then you eventually hit the no-go phase.
Welcome to the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast, the ultimate destination for accredited investors and entrepreneurs seeking alternative wealth building strategies. Discover how to fast-track your journey to wealth and time freedom by thinking outside the box. If you're ready to join the ranks of the Contrarian Capitalists and learn the most effective ways to reach your financial goals faster, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast.
Thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Contrarian Capitalist Podcast. I'm your host and your favorite silverback, Sylvania Harrod, and on today's episode, I'm going to teach you about why it's very important to have a 3-year plan. Now, this episode is going to be pretty tactical in a way, so if you got a pen and paper, pull it out, because I'm going to ask certain questions that I want you to be able to ask yourself. And I'm going to give you insights into just how I go through the process every couple of years of evaluating and creating the necessary next steps. So, the 3-year plan. The reason why I do a 3-year plan is because it's long enough for our brains to comprehend, but not too long to where you go into fairy tale land. And I'm big on reverse engineering the process of the life you want, because here's the reality, like life changes. Life is a spectrum. It's constantly evolving. You have 3 different unique phases of life. You have the go-go phase, you have the slow-go phase, and then you eventually hit the no-go phase. And so all 3 of these phases create different opportunities for us to be able to go through. And so I'll talk about those more in depth on a different episode, but just realize that life always changes. So you guys know I'm a parent of 4. So I have one who's in 1st grade, another one that's a senior in high school. So it's senior year, it's towards the end. We got things like prom, thinking about the summer, this is probably going to be a majority of these people you're engaging with. This may be the last time you ever see them. So make sure you appreciate it, right? Make sure you reach out to the people that you want to reach out to, because these ties are going to be the ones you're going to have there. Because then you're going to embark on a new journey called college. In college, you'll have a different subset of people that like, so that's a different phase. Then you get through college, you're going to go through entering the workforce and picking a profession and going through those stages. So just enjoy every phase that happens to be there. It's human nature for us to want to speed up certain experiences. And then talk about the paradigm of somebody in 1st grade, right? They're in a phase where there's everything's exciting, everything's learning. And then I got one transitioning from elementary to middle school. So yeah, there's just different journeys along. And so the things that matter to me over the next 36 months is different than what it was 36 months ago. When we're just sitting there and figuring out hey, we're getting out of COVID. Can we go places? No, we still got to do masks, et cetera, right? So it's funny. I was thinking 3 years ago, I was just driving 4 years ago. Crazy how time moves. The older you get, the faster it moves. But if we look at those things, listen to what I just said. The older you get, the faster time moves. So what that means is that we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in a decade. So I'm the person that looks at consistency and probability. And I want to teach you guys about a really big word when it comes to life. It's called leverage. In the world of real estate, to paint a picture for you, if you go buy a single family home, you cannot put a 50-story building on top of that single family home without zoning changes. And if you live in a neighborhood that has an HOA, I'm sure they're not want to change zoning laws to have one person have a house that has an apartment building on it. So that means that real estate there's only a maximum return you're going to be able to get from that real estate. Well, you can only do so much. Same thing comes when it comes to businesses. Businesses has lots of leverage. If I took $10 million and poured it into a house, there's only so much of return I can get from that. But if I take $10 million and I buy 10 companies that are doing $1 million in revenue each, Well, I can pretty assure you, I can quadruple my money in comparison to real estate, which is why real estate is known as a wealth preservation tool, because you get all the tax offsets, and business is known as like a wealth aggregation tool. So the leverage point, if you look at those two, which one has more leverage? It's going to be the business. Now, let's back this up a little bit. If we're working inside of a job and we're making a couple $100,000 a year, we can work harder and you can work really hard, but you're going to hit a certain maximum leverage point. And normally, because we're limited by time, you may hit a point where like, okay, I can double my earnings. I can triple my earnings if I have a fantastic year, maybe 4x my earnings to be able to be there. But there'll come a certain point in time where you're going to cap out based upon the current role that you have. And you're going to cap out based upon life. So let's say you're like me and you're a parent and you have a spouse that you enjoy being around and you have children that you actually want to be around. There's so many hours I can work before they realize like daddy isn't there. And then they're just raised with all kinds of abandonment issues and things to be able to be there. There's a point of diminishing returns of more hours spent working does not equate better relationships with your children. You then just become a checkbook. We know plenty of these individuals to be able to be there. So it's determined on me. So in my situation, I go like, no. I want to be there. If they're doing afternoon activities, most of the time I want to be there. I can't be there all the time because sometimes daddy got to go make the bacon. But for a majority of the time, I'm there. Well, when I was working inside of my job, there was a certain leverage point that I was at. I was limited based upon being there. So for many, many years, I made more. It's been almost decade plus of making more outside of my job than I did inside of it. But I chose to be there because I enjoyed what I did until one moment a couple years ago when I said, all right, cool. There's something else I want to do. So I created this 3-year plan so that I can be able to reverse engineer those results, because I actually wanted more autonomy, because I knew that one day they were going to require everybody to go back to office. I knew it. I knew the whole RTO thing was going to come back 2 years ago. Why do you think I created a new 3-year plan? Because I knew it was coming back. And I had to ask myself the question, do I actually want to be in an office again where I don't have the autonomy or the flexibility or freedom to show up and go as I please? I like offices for like 4-hour chunks, maybe 5-hour. We're really digging into something. I like to be in a same room, everybody in the same room, and like we can get all answers there rather than have 12 Zoom calls. That's just exhausting. But if I can get to business and be able to be there, but I damn sure don't want to be somewhere where I have to be there 5 days a week. Nah, player, that don't work for me. So I saw that and I said, okay, I'm going to have to evaluate strategy and be able to be there. So I looked at it and said to myself, all right, based upon not changing lifestyle, what would I need to do and how much would I need to earn? And I had to look at, okay, if I take a role that allows me to work from home, how much in compensation difference is that capable? Because the North Star becomes autonomy of being able to work from home. I look at the math and I go, there are all these roles having to do this responsibility. Am I cut for that role? No, not really. So I had to create a plan that I knew would get me there. So I then calculate how much do I need to make in order to do that and not create another job for myself. And that's when I realized I was like, oh, cool. All businesses have the same problem. All real estate has the same problem. There are two loves of my life. I love business and I love real estate. So I go, all right, what problem do they have? They all need access to capital. So that became my mission. How do I figure this out? How do I find the right people? How do I build the right relationships? And here's the crazy part that God always does. They had been there all along. I just didn't know to look for it. I was engaging every day with different people. Isn't that crazy how that works? And I go, oh, cool. So I started investing into things. I've always been an investor in different ways to be there, but like now I needed to invest into a structure that was going to be able to support lifestyle because I was ready to retire from one career and move to another one. So I looked at that and I said, how can I get the most leverage out of what I'm doing today to ensure that the seeds I'm planting will bloom a couple years from now? And that's what I did. So I looked at it, I said, what's the maximum amount of return I need? What's the minimum amount of hours I need to work for the maximum amount of return? And I'm here to tell you, that's what I did. So I then took because I also looked at it and said, when I leave here, I'm not working 60 hours a week, y'all. I don't much rather work like 20 and 30 because those are the hours my kids are in school. So I looked at it and I said, oh, they're in school roughly like they're in the house 7, come back around 3. So I got, I don't know, like 8 hours a day. So to be able to be there. I need workout time, any other things to be there. So I really want to be digging in 25 hours a week. How can I make the necessary income that is 5x minimum of what my output is? Because then I ain't got to stress, y'all. And so I take that 20% output, and that's not including any monies I already had. So what do? I had to pivot. I had to change. I had to take focus off because I had asked one of the companies I'm working on going to be able to give me that level of return. Fortunately, it wasn't, but is able to cover some. So I was like, all right, cool. You can cover this piece, be able to be here. Maybe you knock out of that 20% delta, you can knock out 25% of it. All right, cool. And from there, I started looking at where can I be the greatest amount of time for my return. And that's when I realized that there's this whole world, and I figured out I was an accredited investor, which means I've earned enough to have a sophistication around investing in different opportunities. I saw that there was other operators that are already magical at what they do, and I knew I want to be in operations. So they just needed capital. I just deployed capital into different projects. Gain a little bit here, gain a little bit there, started creating mailbox money. And the key thing was it offset my earnings I was making in my job. So I started getting closer to like income zero. I'm like, yeah, y'all, that's exactly where I want to be. You're telling me the job I'm busting my tail for, I'm going to be able to pay less in taxes because we get grossly aggregated because we're commissions. Yeah, I can offset that. And I don't have to actually do any operations. I'm not throwing a hammer. I'm not painting the walls. I'm not demoing anything unless I choose to. Hell yeah, I want a part of that. That's where it started. And I just got started because here's the reality I'm going to tell you. Whatever plan you write, just know that you have a 99% probability of that plan not going exactly how you think it's going to happen. You'll still end up at the destination, but we do not control the how it's done, who we do it with, and when it actually is going to, when it's actually going to occur. We can control is how we show up, how we consistently stay perseverant through the process, how we lean into grit, and how we go make it happen. Because that's the consistency part I always tell you about. So let's look at the reality. You create a 3-year plan. You say, okay, based upon 3 years from now, if anything was possible, what would I be doing? How much would I be making? Who am I serving? Because remember, money is always tied to value exchange. The level of value you provide, the level of problem you solve, the greater income you can be able to earn. So let's just use a simple number. If you know that, okay, my lifestyle costs me $200,000 a year, or $20K a month, I need to be making $100K a month because that hits the 5X delta to where if that's your goal, for some people, they just want to make 20. I'm just giving you my goal. I need to make $1 million a year in order to be able to cover that nut. Okay, in 3 years, based upon my current career, is that possible to hit that point of leverage? Yes or no? Maybe my leverage point is I'm going to max out at like 400 grand to give me the return. Okay, I got a 600 grand delta left, right? So you look at the 600 grand, you realize, okay, based upon the skill set I currently have, what would I need to learn or who do I need to become in order to cover that delta to be able to be there? And then now you look at things objectively and you look at and see, am I going to be able to make that number? Because here's the reality. Maybe you shoot for like 5-1, but you end up at 2-1. You're still winning. And so I look at it and I go, okay, cool. I have this number and the thing to be able to be there. This is where I need to be. So for me, I looked at it and said, okay, how can I cover that delta with real estate? Was one of the things. And I go, well, cool. I still want to be, so I either want to be on the debt side where I'm loaning out necessary money to have going out. That's giving me the return to be able to do that. Or I can hit different leverage points where it's like, I can go ahead and I can go find people with capital and they're willing to pay me a certain percentage to be able to go do that based upon just infiltrating other networks and connecting the two. I can be the man in the gray, that I can go through that and I can go through that process and make all that happen. And that's what I did, y'all. And I realized, damn, this definitely makes the number much easier to consume because I'm one deal. Then you realize how hard it is to get one deal. Or you can look at it and you find the right networks that are going to be able to deploy and say, hey, here's a deal that's in front of you. Here's your return. And you start looking at that very methodically. Because if I took that 3 years and zoom out 10, well, maybe it takes me 10. But as long as I'm in progress and I'm in process, I'm moving closer. Because the reality is, if you're 40 right now, retirement is 30 years away. So yeah, I can pump money into a 401k, which that's a whole nother conversation for a different day. But like, you're earning 6% after fees, not including inflation. What if you can go out and you can earn 22, 25, 27% before inflation? You start hedging your bets and having that structure there. All of this is about reverse engineering exactly what you want. But if you don't know what questions to ask, you're never going to be able to find them. So if we look at it tactically, we're going to be like 3 years from now, how much do I need to make gross to be able to live the ideal life that I want to? It's the real question you got to ask yourself. Once you get to that answer, you're going to go through and be like, based upon my current role, what's the realistic maximum amount I can be able to make? You're making 50 grand a year. You're probably limited if you're ever going to get to 100 grand. So just letting you know, like on that one job, then you look at what are the other levers I can be able to pull. Maybe I decide to invest in a private credit deal for a business that I know is going to scale and grow. You start making things easier to consume and you start looking at like, I need to leverage my time better. So I need to be an evaluator of good talent to ensure they're going to follow up on operations, but I also want to create diversification so that I just know the law of averages. If I pick 80% that are winners, I have 20% that are going to shit the bed. That's okay. All this is determined based upon where you want to go and what you actually want to see made possible. And I'm here to help you and guide you through that process. So as a recap to land the plane, understand your 3-year goal of where you want to be physically, relationally, health-wise, financially. Understand those things. Be very specific of what you want to do. Ask really, really hard questions of yourself, because in order to get what you want, you're going to have to do something you're not currently doing. There's trade-offs. And if you have a desire to live a particular way, there's a person you need to grow into in order to make that a possibility. And I'm here to help you every step of the way. So as always, you can find me on all social media platforms at Sylvania Harrod. Don't follow me on TikTok. I never use the damn thing. If you want to find me, you can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Those are primarily the ones that I use anyway. And I'm here to help you as you drop comments, as you hit my DMs, as you send me messages. I'll create more tactical content for you if this serves you. So stay hungry, stay humble, and stay healthy, my friends. Cheers.